Like all the places on the creek, Laurel Hill Chemical Works was no stranger to labor fighting for its rights and ownership trying to repress them. A few years before the Penny Bridge fell into the creek and took with it some employees from Laurel Hill, the chemical works saw strikes, Pinkertons, and blood. Tuesday, August 16, 1887, the New York Times. Chemical works shut down. The Laurel Hill Chemical Works at Long Island City have been shut down, throwing 150 men out of employment. Friday last, 20 men in the acid room struck work because their demands for higher wages and the dismissal of Daniel Broderick, a foreman, who was alleged to be very obnoxious to the men, were refused by the superintendent, Mr. Hershoff. As the men did not return to work Saturday, Mr. Hershoff notified all the employees that he would shut down the works in preference to acceding to the strikers' demands. Efforts are being made by some of the non-strikers to bring about a settlement. Friday, August 19, 1887, the New York Times. In a state of siege, the Laurel Hill strikers keep all boats away. G.H. Nichols's Laurel Hill Chemical Works at Blissville continued in a state of peaceful siege most of the day yesterday. The works are guarded by 35 Pinkerton detectives armed with revolvers and clubs. Upon a neighboring hill and on the bridge over Newtown Creek, a large number of the strikers had collected. Their main purpose was to prevent tugboats from taking away any of the lighters or barges belonging to the works. They succeeded entirely by force of argument in keeping all but one of the tugboats away. In the morning, a large canal boat was towed through the draw to the works in spite of the strikers' protestations. It was an innocent-looking affair, but on its arrival at the factory, the hatches were taken off and disclosed a cargo of 75 German laborers who had been thus smuggled into the works to take the strikers' places. About 30 of these deserted during the day, however. They said they had been employed with the understanding that they were to be taken to Albany to work in chemicals there. Once on the canal boat, the hatches were battened down and not removed until Blissville was reached. Those who left said that the remainder wished to do so also, but were afraid of abuse from the strikers. In spite of the presence of the Pinkerton men, which naturally exasperates the strikers, no serious outbreak occurred yesterday. Twice a row seemed imminent. Once, when the strikers were arguing with the driver of a truck carrying acid from the works, the Pinkerton men, without any apparent cause, drew their revolvers and presented them at the strikers. Again, when another truck guarded by 6 officers drove away from the works, several large stones were thrown at the driver, one of them striking him in the back. The strikers generally discountenance violence, and it was claimed that the stones were thrown by boys in the crowd. Another cargo of men is expected this morning. The strike has been in force since Saturday and includes 170 men, the whole crew of the works. Their main grievance seems to be the retention of a foreman, Daniel Broderick, who, they claim, has made himself particularly obnoxious to the men. The strikers also asked for a guarantee of 6 days' work per week, or to be paid at the rate of 30 cents per hour. They had been working for $1.50 to $2.25 a day of 12 hours without time for dinner. They also claimed that the work had been very irregular in the past 3 weeks. They are, most of them, members of the Washington Association, District Assembly Number 49, Knights of Labor. Saturday, August 20, 1887, the New York Tribune. Laurel Hill strikers violent, seriously injuring a driver, hooting the police at a safe distance. The strike, which has been in progress at the Laurel Hill Chemical Works on Newtown Creek since Saturday, has been accompanied with considerable violence. The fact that an entire new force has been put to work under police protection all the old men having been paid off and discharged, has greatly embittered the former employees. Attempts have been made to blockade the road at Newtown Creek to prevent trains from passing to and from the works, but so far the police have been able to disperse the strikers. Yesterday, John Schmidt, a new driver, was badly injured by stones thrown at him by the strikers and was sent to the hospital. G.H. Nichols, the head of the firm of G.H. Nichols and Company, who owns the works, said yesterday, "This is the most causeless strike to date. No men ever had less reason to complain. Our works are the largest chemical works in this country, nearly the largest in the world. We have employed usually 200 men. Some of them have been with us 17 years. They have always been paid good wages. Our payroll foots up 2,000 to 2,500 a week. We want the best men and are willing to pay the best wages. For some time there has been a scarcity of coke, and in order to keep the men in the copper department busy, we have set them at other work. They objected to this, so the superintendent decided to lay them off until a supply of coke could be obtained. The result was that on Saturday night at 9 o'clock they struck, demanding 6 hours' work on 30 cents per hour. I went down to the works on Monday morning and met a committee of the men, when they increased their demands and required the discharge of a foreman. I found it useless to parley with them, and therefore paid them off and discharged them. I then started up with a new force of men, who are boarding and lodging in the works. They are mostly Germans, though many are Irish and Americans. There are among them engineers, machinists, drivers, and laborers, and they are doing perfectly satisfactory work. In spite of denials, however, the old men have been doing their best to intimidate them, but we have plenty of policemen and expect to get along. Mr. Nichols showed the reporter a carboy of the oil of vitriol which had been upon the truck driven by the injured man referred to. The box containing the carboy was badly shattered by stones thrown by the strikers. A large crowd of strikers gathered at the Penny Bridge approaches on Thursday night and hooted and stoned a detachment of police returning from the works, whither they had escorted a truck. The police were compelled to charge the crowd with their clubs in order to disperse them. Friday, August 26, 1887, the New York Tribune. New men for the chemical works. The strikers at the Laurel Hill Chemical Works owned up yesterday that they were beaten, and some of them asked permission to return to work. There was less excitement about the works than at any time since the trouble began, and only a few pickets remained on duty near the Penny Bridge and the little church nearby, which has been the meeting place of the strikers. This, however, did not prevent the company from keeping up the protecting precautions that had been made. Arrangements were made to lodge and feed 200 men. The range that the Pinkerton detectives used in the Great Chicago Strike was put up, and tables and stools were put in position, and everything was made ready for a long siege. 5 truckloads of chemicals were shipped from the factory in the forenoon, and they were escorted by the detectives to Penny Bridge, where the procession was met by Sergeant Miles O'Reilly and 12 policemen, and they guarded it past Tammany Hall in Meeker Avenue, where a large number of women friends of the strikers tendered their compliments in uncomplimentary language. They had been waiting a long time for the procession and had piles of stones, old shoes, and decayed fruit to bombard the drivers. But the presence of the officers overawed them, and nothing but vile language was thrown at the drivers. 33 men were added to the force of employees yesterday. About 10 a.m., the tug W.H. Temple ran alongside the pier near the works. There appeared to be none but the regular complement of hands on board when it steamed up Newtown Creek, and the strikers did not molest it. But as the tug ran up to the pier, men crawled out from every place where a man could be hidden from sight, until 33 stood on the wharf. The strikers concluded not to attack so large a body, and the new men went to work without further delay.